Hello, I'm Howard Mann, creator of Conscious Shifting, and welcome to Conscious Shifting. Before we get started, a quick warning and disclaimer. Conscious shifting and all known side effects will improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while providing the ideal environment for spiritual awakening, helping you live the life of your dreams and influence the world in a positive way. So, if that's something that interests you, then follow us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube, and then join us here Wednesday nights, California time, 6 p.m. for Conscious Shifting. All right, so tonight's topic is how to remain calm in a crisis. Have you ever wished you knew how to remain calm in a crisis? If so, you're not alone. Not so surprisingly, many people find it challenging to remain calm during a crisis. However, you can start with the following. Hi, Cheryl. Love, laugh, and be happy in the house. I'm sure that you've noticed the tremendous chaos surrounding current events, widespread fear, and even panic in the news. Most of you are witnessing political unrest far worse than ever in your life, with unprecedented levels of corruption running rampant throughout government and the news media. You may think that it can't get any worse, but then it does. You may be wondering, are we descending into civil war? And as we march steadfastly towards World War III, the world stage doesn't look any better. So, how do you remain calm in a crisis? What can you do when everything seems to be falling apart? Hi, Susan. Hi, Kim. Hi, Tina. All right. So perhaps, well, the first thing you do is to learn to focus on what's important. There's all kinds of stuff coming at us all the time. So just kind of focus on what's important. Perhaps you've noticed that almost everything has been radically politicized in recent years. When something is over politicized, it drives a wedge between people. As a result, the illusion of separation is strengthened, which leads to increased chaos and fear. Rather than our leaders working to unite people, they create further division. Hi, Trey. And divided we fall. Realize that politicization is intended to divide and conquer. This is extreme egotism and a means of control. So don't let politics distract you from the truth. Remember this always. We are one. In form, we are humanity. In essence, we are eternal spirit. Hi, Kathy. How you doing? Similarly, the so-called news media, the so-called impartial news media, is anything but honest. And like any good conspiracy theory, the mainstream news broadcasts contain just enough truth to make it sound convincing, but they intend to brainwash you. Don't let this frighten you. Instead, realize that the mainstream news outlets have become nothing more than propaganda machines for corrupt governments. So don't believe the propaganda. Corruption in government is nothing new. There are endless examples throughout history. Countless regimes have collapsed under the weight of corruption. When governments get too far out of control, they will fall. Always. Hi, Christina. And as this happens, it gets messy. Corrupt governments fail, but the people carry on. As far back in history as you want to go, there's been corruption, famine, epidemics, pandemics, poverty, violence, warfare. And yet humanity has survived and even prospered. Every day in the United States, approximately 8,000 people die from all sorts of things. That's more than 5 people per minute. And worldwide, over 100 people per minute die. This is every day. Death happens, but it's not the end of the world. Life goes on. Death is very much a part of life. Someday, something will take every one of us out of this life. We will eventually move on. Hi, Christina. The world is temporary, but you are eternal spirit. Therefore, the world has no hold on you. The world does not define you. You are defined by what you do while in this world. So while you are here, bring as much love as possible to as many as possible. Other than love, everything does harm and instills fear. So focus on spreading love rather than fear. That's what's most important. Love heals because it's the consciousness of God. Now, are you starting to feel a little calmer? I hope so. Trey says, thank you for being a voice of reason. This isn't our first rodeo. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And Susan, have you ever heard of Box? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Maybe you can send me something on it and I'll look into it. The thing is that there's always all this stuff going on. And there's always all these problems. There's always all this corruption. And so it seems like, especially recently here, we're always in some kind of a crisis. The thing that you can do is to remain spiritually centered. Simply putting things in perspective, separating fact from paranoia, goes a long ways towards squashing fear. However, the most essential facts are spiritual facts. For example, in a crisis, remain spiritually centered to stay calm. No, it must be some method they do. I mean, I might know what it is, but by a different name. But I have not, or at least I don't remember, Box. You can start by not taking what's going on personally. Taking things personally is operating from the ego. It's attachment to and identification with your emotions. And while concern for the future and your fellow humans may be noble, emotional attachment is counterproductive. It sucks you into the sheer madness concerning you in the first place. Consequently, this knocks you off your spiritual center. Moreover, emotions fuel hatred and violence, essentially mental illness on parade, psychosis projected onto the world stage. Far too many people get sucked in by taking it personally, so don't be one of them. While people are identified with their emotions, you can't even have an honest conversation with them because they're unconscious. No one's home. So, despite any appearance, they are operating from the subconscious. In the subconscious, people are no different than other animals operating from lower consciousness. Lower consciousness is the realm of ego and is based on fear. So, however, regardless of their levels of consciousness, humans manifest that into reality. That's why you're seeing what you're seeing. Humans not only create, but manipulate reality. And unfortunately, as long as the majority are spiritually unconscious, chaos is going to rule supreme. Understand that the hatred and unnecessary violence you see in the world stem from spiritual unconsciousness. No matter the supposed reason, both are based on fear. And since fear is low level consciousness, the only thing to come out of fear is low level consciousness. Therefore, irrationality will not produce rational results. Hi, Bonnie. Additionally, any lack of spiritual consciousness creates the illusion that you need to be in control. Furthermore, if you believe you need to be in control, lack of control results in fear. So we're back to fear again. You do not need to be in control. Instead, to remain calm in a crisis, remain spiritually centered. What's going to happen is going to happen. It needs to happen, which is why it can't be stopped. These growing pains are associated with the beginning of the awakening process. The need to control is one of the leading causes of these problems in the first place. Not to mention, it eventually leads to an aggressive market for total control, intergovernment. Hence, the vast majority of violence you see in the world is an attempt to control others. It's all low level stuff. So just understand that's what it is. The need to control is based on fear, while the effort to maintain projects fear. Sad but true. Still, freaking out about it is not going to help either, since that is just more fear. Whatever will be, will be. Consequently, it's beyond your control. So there's no point in getting freaked out about it or even upset about it. Just accept that this is where people are consciously, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. And until consciousness rises, this is what we're going to continue to see. In fact, I would say that it's probably going to get a lot worse, because this awakening is bringing this stuff up. In order to awaken and rise above the ego, you have to process the darkness that's in ego. And that's what we're seeing. Therefore, your only responsibility is to be the highest version of yourself possible at any given moment. That's it. That's all you have to concern yourself with. And you can live in peace and influence the world by your example. And to do so goes back to holding your spiritual center. Hi, Sherry. So rather than give in to fear, do what spirit moves you to do and let the rest go. You always have two options: either act on behalf of the greater good or something else. The greater good implies a spiritual connection and will always produce the best results for all of creation. Of course, you are included in the greater good, but more importantly, you can help manifest it. Doing so secures the best possible life experience for you and others. So live for the greater good and let spirit do the rest. In other words, remain spiritually centered so that no matter what's happening, you're holding the presence. And you hold it for yourself and for others. Just hold that space. There will be crises. The awakening has begun. And there will be crises because awakening brings darkness in the ego into the light. But do not fear. Instead, focus on the light. Holding your spiritual center is the most important thing that you can do. It's choosing love and peace while creating a harmonious life regardless of what's happening. It's trusting in the divine rather than in the ego. That's really what it boils down to. Nothing in the physical world can change who and what you are. You are, in essence, spirit. Furthermore, you are part of the great eternal spirit. So what is there to fear? Trey says she's loving this. What do I want to manifest for the greater good? Indeed. See, that's how you think. You don't buy into all this stuff that's going on. You just say, what can I do for the greater good? And in the process of doing that, you'll influence others. More and more people will pick up that vibe. And eventually, enough people will start working for the greater good that that's what's going to become the predominant consciousness. And when that happens, you're going to see all these problems just start to go away. They'll just cease to exist because they no longer reside in consciousness, and so they won't be manifested. Sherry, you're absolutely correct. And you learn how to balance. Yes. You just balance all this stuff out. Yeah, you're here. We're in a physical realm. We're in a physical body, but we're also, and more importantly, spiritual beings, eternal spiritual beings. We're here temporarily. So we have to kind of balance those two. We have to play the game of life, in other words, but we don't have to buy into all the negativity. I mean, remember, the whole point of coming here was to express our spiritual essence while in human form. So if we start identifying with the body and we start identifying with the physical world and we buy into all of this psychosis, we're actually going to create spiritual blocks and prevent ourselves from expressing what we came here to express. In other words, we're going to become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Let's put it that way. Actually, I thought I was going to talk about this longer, but I've said about everything that there was that I wanted to say. Does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff? Because we'll do a little healing circle or something, but this will probably be a short night unless there's a lot of questions. Sometimes that happens, you know. I talk about something, there's certain points I want to make, and if there's questions, sometimes I have a hard time fitting it all into it in an hour. But if there's not, then sometimes we finish up early. Usually it's the other way though. Usually it's a problem getting it in within an hour. Okay, I don't see any, and I know there's a delay, and sometimes that causes issues. What I see is usually a minute or even two after it's put in the comment box. That's why sometimes they roll by so fast. It takes me a while to get to everything. But I don't see anything, so I'm current with all of that. Hi, Gil. Gil says the theory is very hard to put into practice. Easier said than done. Yes, it takes a little bit of work because we're so conditioned to respond emotionally. I mean, the mind body, it's geared for that. Think of emotions as you have thoughts. That's the energy that's sent out from your brain down through the central nervous system to into the entire nervous system, out to all parts of your body. And then your body responds to that information with an emotion, which is the information coming from the body back up into the brain. So there's this constant communication between the two. Just the fact that we're in a mind body, that's the natural way things work. And if you don't keep that perspective that we're spiritual beings temporarily in the mind body, it's very easy to start identifying with the mind body. And then on top of that, the world conditions you to buy into this egotistical worldview. and respond to everything emotionally. So after years and years and years of conditioning, that seems like reality, and it's just you've trained yourself or been trained, brainwashed to respond in that way. So you have to catch yourself, and it takes a little bit of work at first, but just always remind yourself that you're a spiritual being, you're temporarily here, and you're here to express spirit through the mind body, not and into a physical world, not to identify with the mind body and the physical world. Physical world is temporary. It's not our home. It's a sub reality of a much bigger reality. It is not the reality. And the mind body is just the vehicle that we're traveling around in while we're here. So if you remind yourself of those things, then you can start to unravel this conditioning into always responding to everything emotionally. That's what you see. All this tension and fighting and all this kind of stuff. It's all emotionally based, all extremely irrational. Kim says, what about a different type of crisis? Any crisis, it's going to boil down to the same thing. You can respond emotionally, which is, our go-to. It's what we're conditioned to do. It could be a relationship crisis. It could be a financial crisis. It could be your house is on fire. It doesn't really matter what the crisis is. If you allow yourself to get emotionally caught up in it, you're going to start getting tense and then panic. And in that, you're going to send stressful thoughts down to the body, and the response is going to be emotions that are based on that stress. The body, when it's stressed, is going to start trying to divert energy, to deal with a crisis, gross motor movements. So it's going to start shutting down other things. That's why stress is unhealthy. Things like the immune system and your maintenance and repair systems get shut down so that energy can be diverted into these muscles that are needed to either fight or flight this crisis. The brain, blood vessels in the brain will actually constrict, reducing blood flow to the higher parts of the brain where we do our thinking, because in an emergency, there's not a lot of time for thinking. You need to respond if you're going to survive. And so by these blood vessels constricting and not allowing blood into the thinking part of the brain, more blood will flow into the subconscious, which is all reactionary. So whatever programs are in there, that's how you're going to respond. And that's how you get these knee-jerk reactions. And you can override that, but you have to be conscious of it. And it doesn't matter what the crisis is, you either get sucked into the emotional level of things, or you stay spiritually centered and just look at it for what it is. Your house could be on fire, but it doesn't mean you need to panic and start running into walls or jump out the window, or it's like, okay, the house is on fire and I need to move, and I need to move quick, but with that mental clarity, is there anyone else in the house? Do I need to help get them out, or am I the only one and I can just exit? You do that, get everyone and yourself to safety, and then worry about the structure. If it can be saved, fine. If not, it can be rebuilt. But every single crisis that you go through can be handled the same way. When you get caught up in the emotions, you're just playing an energetic loop in your brain. A relationship, you have a bad breakup, you can get emotionally distraught. Oh, if only this, if only that, what could I have done differently? Oh, it hurts so bad. So you start with these programs playing over and over and over in your mind, and every time you do that, you're subjecting your body to all of that stuff as if it's happening right now, because you're literally reliving it. You're sending that information down into your body, and your body's reacting, and you're reliving that over and over and over instead of processing it and moving on. It was unfortunate, but it happened. Life goes on, so you can kind of if you calm yourself down, you can see things in a more positive way. you know it might be instructive to think about, was there something that you could have done better that might have made the relationship better, and the next one, do that then, but don't dwell on it. Um, so there are some differences depending on the crisis, but it all boils down to the same thing. You live and you learn, but you're only going to learn if you move forward. You look at the experience, you try to find a more positive way, a better way of seeing it from a higher view, a higher level of consciousness. And if you can do that, then that's higher information, which will result in something better. But you have to incorporate that information into your behavior. You see? So you'll grow when you can process that and make it meaningful, instead of being stuck in this place emotionally, just playing it over and over and over. You learn from it. And when you add that new information to action, then you create a directional change in your life. And that's growth. That's personal growth. And all these crises can be opportunities for growth. That's really what they are. And if we don't learn from them, then we're going to repeat them, or even worse. But yes, we've been so conditioned that our natural response is not really that beneficial to our health or to the world collectively. Cheryl, really enjoying your new book. Excellent read so far. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys don't know, I just posted it, but the new book is out and it's available on Amazon. You can click on the picture of it on the page. It's one of the featured things, and it'll take you right there if you want it. Gil, very rude patient, dealing with that daily. There are people that are just difficult. And earlier when I was talking about that, I think I said something to the effect that, people in the subconscious, this emotional state that I'm talking about, uh, rather than being conscious of the moment, when they're in their subconscious, it's whatever programming is in there, and that's what they're working with without even realizing it. They may not even understand how they appear to somebody else, or if they do, they're so damaged that they don't care. They're projecting their pain. So there are people like that. They're not going to be like that forever, but they're going to be like that until they learn something better, until they rise in consciousness. That consciously is where they are. So I'm not making excuses for inappropriate or hurtful behavior. I'm not doing that at all. I'm not saying that it should be tolerated, much less celebrated. But at the same time, they can't really help themselves. That's where they are. And so that's how they are. And all you can really do is try to handle the situation with love and hope that it triggers something within them and helps them to grow out of it. Kim, a regular scenario for one may be a crisis for another. Yeah, everybody has their own ideas about what a crisis is. there are some people that they live in a neighborhood where every day there's shootings and their kids just playing in the front yard are running the risk of being murdered. That's completely different than somebody who lives in some very high end um, gated community where if a dog took a dump on the polo field, that's a crisis. What are we going to do? We can't play polo with this stuff on the field. So we got to get somebody to clean this up. So I'm being a little ridiculous, but it illustrates the point. Everybody has their own idea about what a crisis is, and I don't remember who. I think it was Shakespeare. He said that he used to complain about having no shoes until he met a man that had no feet. And so, it's all a matter of perspective. But if we're going to rise above it, then we have to rise above it. We have to consciously rise into a higher state of consciousness. So first you have to be open to it. If you're locked into the emotional state and you're a victim and you just gave up your power. First of all, if you assume the role of a victim, what you're really saying is that this happened to me. And therefore, because somebody else did this to me, it's not going to be fixed until somebody else does something for me. When the reality is that mentally, you've accepted the victim mentality. And regardless of what's going on around you, you're going to play the role of a victim. This can even be on a subconscious level. If you adopted a belief a long time ago that you're a victim of the world, then even though you may think that you're making decisions and making moves in life and all this, if you subconsciously believe that you're a victim, you're going to sabotage your life. The majority of what you attract into your life, the majority of what you manifest into reality is done at a subconscious level. The conscious part of the brain is extremely powerful. It can override anything in the subconscious. But because there's so much going on with analysis, it can only really handle one thing effectively at a time. The subconscious, on the other hand, is nothing but programs, stored memories. It's like little records down there. And the record in a certain situation, a certain record is going to get played. There's no thinking involved. So the subconscious is capable of processing a tremendous amount of information and responding very quickly because there's no analysis. There's no one in there thinking. It's just a reaction, a learned reaction. So most of the time, what you're, and we'll get into this in a future live because this is getting to kind of an important subject, and that is that there might be all kinds of stuff in your subconscious that's inappropriate for your life, and you're not even aware of it. You learned it when you were a small child. You were damaged in an early relationship, and you're still carrying those wounds, but you've suppressed them, so you think you got over it. In reality, you didn't. Things you might have learned while you were still in the womb. Things you might have carried into this life from past lifetimes. There's all kinds of stuff that's stored in your subconscious, and it's constantly putting out these energetic commands and manifesting reality. So at some point, you can be conscious of the moment, and then whatever rises into your consciousness from your subconscious, whatever thoughts, whatever emotions rise into your consciousness, you can look at them and decide whether you want to engage them or not. If you engage them, that's going to help manifest that into reality. But you could also react completely differently. And that is, whoa, I don't know where that came from, but that's not cool. And think of a different way of seeing the same situation. And if you do that enough times, you're going to reprogram your subconscious. And so even the things that you're not aware of are going to be manifesting more in alignment with what you really want in life. You follow that? But we'll get into that in another life. That's a big subject. Bonnie says, so do we have to fight against the fight or flight feelings? No, not fight them, because that's a form of resistance. And resistance is putting energy into something. What you put your energy and your attention on, you're going to create more of. So it's not that we resist them. You feel the way you feel, and you have the thoughts that you have, and you have the emotions that you have. And so you accept that. But it doesn't mean you have to act on them. And it doesn't mean that you have to believe that that's the way your life needs to be. So you always have this choice. And that's kind of like what I was talking about, what's for the greater good. That's a great rule of thumb. If you're confused about something and you've got these thoughts and emotions coming up, what's for the greater good? In other words, what is going to benefit everybody in this situation or leave them in a better place than they are right now? That's a win-win-win, right? As opposed to a more egotistical and predatory type of thought, like, oh, I can really come up on this, at the expense of somebody else, because that's what you see in the world. And that's a reptilian level of consciousness. It's not sophisticated at all. It's very, very old. Goes back to, the dinosaurs. But there are people that operate predominantly in that level of consciousness. Predatory gain. That's not the greater good. So you always have this choice, and you can rid yourself of those kinds of thoughts and emotions if, when they come up, you choose a higher thought or emotion. One way to do that is, what is for the greater good? Another way to do that is to ask for divine guidance. God, how would you have me see, spirit, source, however you want to see this supreme consciousness? Ask, how would you have me see this situation? What would you have me say to this person? Not what am I feeling and thinking, and what would really serve them right? What's going to prove the point to them? None of that kind of stuff. Just, spirit, how would you have me see this situation? What would you have me say to this person? What would you have me do? That's another way to do it. What is for the greater good? What is unconditional love? Not that that's weak and a pushover and you just let people, railroad you. That's not that's just being weak. That's not what I'm talking about. But you can stand for what's right and do it in a loving way. You don't have to tear other people down, to try to prove a point. Just try to raise the level of the conversation as calmly as possible. And if you have people that are just like really triggered, then just drop it, because you're not going to get anywhere in that moment with them. But we could actually do, that I should be writing this stuff down. Kim, do that for me if you would, because that would be another great live, is something that most people lack, and that's communication skills. How to communicate with somebody who's being triggered or being aggressive or projecting pain, because there are ways that you can reach them, but it's not going to happen by headbutting, or by trying to win the argument or show them what's up, or prove your point. That's all ego stuff. That it won't accomplish anything other than creating more problems. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about trying to move the conversation, the situation, the circumstances into a higher state than it's in right now. And you do that by bridging to where the person is. It's and then at their level, trying to, in a loving way, convey a higher spiritual message and let them, if they're ready, they will recognize that and move in that direction, not force them or convince them of anything. And force is the way of the world. It's not spiritual, but spirit's not weak either. I'm not suggesting that, you just let people, take advantage of you or harm the innocent. Some people, they get the spiritual thing all messed up, and they'll say, "Oh, all violence is bad," and well, it's not good, but depending on the reason for it, I can guarantee you that if an innocent was being attacked in my presence, it would stop. And if that meant that I had to physically stop it, I would physically stop it. Not because I'm mad or angry or trying to hurt the person who's trying to harm this child, but out of love and to protect that child. You see the difference? So spirit's not weak. It's just not aggressive unnecessarily. There are exceptions, and that is when the innocent is under attack. You defend the innocent. That's love. And it can get pretty heavy. There's people that have laid their life on the line in the love of other people. There's not a greater gift you can give. You want to talk about oneness consciousness. A lot of people in the spiritual community talk about this oneness consciousness, but they won't do that. They won't step up in that way. Well, then they're not really understanding oneness consciousness. Maybe on an intellectual level, they kind of get what it means, but they're not experiencing it, and they're not it. And that's when things really matter, is when you become that level of consciousness. So you open yourself up to a higher reality. And when that information, and you'll notice that this happens, when you start to master the level of consciousness that you're at, and you open yourself up to the possibility that there may be a higher level of consciousness, that information will present itself in some way. Something will happen, someone will say something, you'll see something somewhere, or it will just pop into your head. But that information, that higher information, will present itself in some way. And when it does, you have an opportunity because you can embrace it. Then you start to understand it. So first you're open to it, then comes the understanding, and then at some point you become it. When you do, you are now operating at a higher level of consciousness, and what you're projecting onto the world, what you're manifesting into reality, is of a higher order. This is the process of spiritual awakening. But it's not a fight in an aggressive way where we're going to duke it out. The fight or flight feelings are, again, going back to that reptilian level of consciousness, way down in the base of the brain, the very primitive brain. Even reptiles have this. And it was the first inkling that there was something else. It was a very primitive level of awareness that there was something else out there. It's the beginning of the ego, in fact, that idea of separation. But it was necessary for life to survive and to evolve on the planet, because if there wasn't this awareness, then there would not have been a recognition of a predator, and they would have been gobbled up and not reproduced, and then that species would have become extinct. So it's a survival mechanism. but it's really based in fear, and that's why it's fight or flight, because when there's this danger, you either have to fight the danger or you have to get away from the danger. And so the body over millions of years has developed all these systems to deal with that. But the body doesn't know whether it's a saber-toothed tiger coming after you or your significant other raising their voice and you're starting to get triggered by that, because the signal's the same. There's something wrong, there's danger, and then the body goes into this fight or flight syndrome, this stress response, which causes all of these problems. It wasn't ever really designed to be a state of being. Like now with the lifestyles we live, we live in this stressful state. And so the immune system's not working properly because some of the energy is being siphoned off. The healing mechanisms, the maintenance mechanism, even our intelligence is we're not as intelligent when we're stressed because we're operating more from a subconscious level and less from a conscious level. There's all these things that happened. It was originally designed to deal with the life threat. And then once you survived, assuming you survived, then all of these other things came back online. These things that went offline were not necessary in a life-threatening situation, but they are necessary for a healthy life. And so all those systems, the immune system, all this stuff has to come back online. But if we stay stressed all the time, it doesn't. And we end up with cancer or something along those lines. It's not that we fight it. It's that we recognize it and don't engage it. We just see it for what it is. Kim says that caregivers have the hardest job. Try to remember they are projecting their pain. That's right. There's only two things. Here's something else that you can take with you from tonight. See, every interaction with another, with another human being as either a projection of love or a cry for love. It's one or the other. Because they're either operating from a high level of consciousness, in which case they're going to be projecting love, or they're operating from a lower level of consciousness in which they're going to be crying for love. Now, they may not understand that that's what's going on. It may not even appear that that's what's going on, but that's what's going on. In some way, they're damaged. The programming is corrupted, and that's the way they're responding to that situation. And it's a projection of their pain. It's their pain manifesting itself into reality. So if you keep that in mind, it makes it easier to deal with these people and easier to treat them with love, because they're in pain, even if they don't understand that's what it is. Just see, you take the high road and understand what it is and treat them, the best that you can. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do for people, but you can at least show them a reasonable amount of respect and some love. Even if they're being total asses, you can still do that. And then, I'll walk away. But yeah, the caregivers have the hardest job because it's their job to care for this person who's out of control. And people that are sick, they're dealing with a lot. They're not themselves. They could physically be in pain, not just emotionally. The medications could be interfering with them. They could be scared. There's a lot of things that go on with people that are having health crises, and that gets projected onto the people that are around them, which is typically going to be the caregiver. A very difficult job, a very critical job for somebody that can do it in a loving way. Very, very much needed in this world, but a very difficult thing just the same. Trey, exactly what you're touching on in your book, how all of this affects us physically too. It does. It does affect us physically, mentally, and spiritually. And Gil, the name of the book, the new one that they're talking about, is called The Art of Conscious Shifting: Awakening the Healer Within. And it's one of the featured posts. In fact, I think it's the first featured post. I think the only thing that's featured on the page at the very top are the 3 books. And the first one, you'll see it, The Art of Conscious Shifting. If you just click on it, it'll take you to Amazon. That's the book that they're talking about. Tina says that she needed to hear this tonight. Good. There's confirmation that that's how spirit rolls. Everybody's going to understand something about this, no matter what level they're at. That's how spirit works. It's multi-dimensional. Everybody will get something out of it. But the fact that you recognize that is great. Yes, Gil, the rational way makes sense. Much better than the irrational way. It might not still be perfect because we are dealing with imperfect human beings, but it's better than the irrational way for sure. Bonnie, we have to be understanding for people. The rude behaviors on them. It is, how somebody behaves is their karma. How you respond is yours. Always remember that. And just because they're behaving in a certain way is not necessarily a reflection of them, I think, is the point I was trying to make earlier, and I didn't quite get all the way there, because they're not in their right mind. Their spirit is trying to project. They're trying to express themselves, which in essence were spirit, but it's going through the human filter, and there's all this baggage in the way, and that's the way it comes out. It's through the pain and through the trauma and through the misbeliefs and through the false beliefs that they're coming out. And that's just the way it looks, but it's not really them. If you could see through all of the garbage, you would see them. And that's how God would have you see them. And that's who they are. But it's being filtered through all this other stuff. And that's what you're getting. Now, if you understand that, then it makes it a little bit easier dealing with difficult people. And you have to be really patient. Just know that you are a eternal spiritual being, and so are they. And we have forever to work this out, and eventually we will. So just be patient, because it might not be this week. It might not even be this lifetime. But it is what it is. Everything in its own time. Kim says, I am no victim. I bear witness to many tragedies. Yes, and that's how you do it. You make it meaningful, and you make it meaningful by overcoming it. And then you have something to help other people with. Your life story becomes not so much about what happened to you and how you're a victim. Your story becomes about how you overcame it, and now how you're able to connect with other people going through it and help them to overcome it. You see the difference? It's huge. It's everything. Bonnie says we always have to rise above and stand in our positivity. Absolutely. Hi, Carrie. Yes, and asking for guidance. I do it constantly. How would you have me see this? What would you have me say? What would you have me do? Everything I do. I don't care if it's picking a bell pepper at the grocery store or, dealing with an unruly person. It's always the same with me, because I know how ego works. And, if I dive down there and into all the emotions and all the negativity, it's just going to be a mess. So I don't do it. And if I do, I catch myself. I'm not perfect, but I am at a point where I catch myself very quickly. For the most part, I just roll with spirit. This is why I do these lives. It's why I write these books. It's how I handle most things. But I have my moments, as short-lived as they may be. I have my moments. I'm not going to lie. I'll own it. It is what it is. Yes, caregiving is draining. Um, and yeah, it's super windy here. We live in the desert and we get high winds, and we broadcast via satellite. So the dish shakes in the wind, and that's what sometimes causes the buffering. Sometimes it's on Facebook's end of it, but a lot of times it's because the dish is vibrating in the wind, and the signal to the satellite gets disturbed. But there's no cables running out here, so it's the only way we can do it is via satellite. All right, let's move on to a healing circle and see, with some questions, we covered all kinds of other stuff. It was probably the best part of the live, and now we're up against the time clock for the healing circle. So let's go there. We'll put this up first. There we go. All right, so everybody gather around, form a circle, join hands, gently close your eyes and mouths. Everyone in, holding hands, form a circle. Energetically, that is. Now, do you feel that? I know some of you do. Can you feel that we're holding hands? Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? All right. And if not, don't worry. In time, you will. Trust me. So eyes and mouth gently closed, breathing through the nose down to an area just below the belly button, and then exhale back out through the nose. So a nice deep breath way down into the tummy, inhaling peace, and then exhale tension. And again, deep breath, inhaling peace, and exhale all tension, stress, disease, troublesome thoughts, negativity, everything right on out with the breath. And one more time, big deep breath, peace and positivity. And exhale tension and negativity. All right, continue breathing on your own. Let the physical world go for a while, just for a few minutes here. And find the calm within you. Search consciously for calm within you. And if you can't find any at the moment, visualize it. Visualize it as a divine light glowing in your heart center. And then let that divine light expand throughout your body. Just let it grow. With each breath, see the calm expanding. See the divine light expanding. And as it comes in contact with anything dark or tense, just let the light pass right through it. Let your consciousness pass right through it without force, just moving on through, dissipating the darkness with light, easing the tension with calm peace. And continue allowing this light or this consciousness, this calm, to expand until your entire body is calm with divine energy. Every cell. And then let your energy expand beyond your body, moving through physical objects around you. Let your positive energy encompass everything around you. So now the space around you is being influenced positively by your vibe, by your energy, by your divine consciousness. It has a calming, positive effect on everything around you. You are not separate from, but rather one with all. That's how you can do this. And you can take it as far as you want, because everything exists within supreme consciousness that you're a part of. Everything. There's no separation. It's an illusion. So, knowing that, let your consciousness be a calm influence on all. Hold divine presence. And let's just sit with that for about a minute and then we'll finish up. Just think about holding divine presence and everything existing within that presence. Okay. Now, I know some of you feel that, and some of you may feel more than others. And I'm not suggesting that people use imagination and fantasy, because the energy is real. And if you don't feel it, you will in time. Trust me on that. So for the moment, imagine it as light and know that the tiniest light in the largest darkness still lights the darkness. And that's how divine energy works. It's a light in the dark. And so let's hold that presence, that divine presence, and project it out through consciousness into the world, bathing everybody in divine light. Everybody. Unconditional love. No exceptions. Everybody being bathed in light. See it pouring over them like they're in a shower of divine light. And so it is. All right, slowly open your eyes. There we go. Kim saying, what a beautiful DeGrazia mug. We were in Tucson, Arizona, and there's a DeGrazio Studios. He was an artist, and we picked up one of his prints, and these coffee mugs have some of his art on them. Really inspirational guy. I don't know if you can see that, but he did a lot with children. That's what attracts me to it. He a lot of the pictures are of children, and children dancing kind of like in a spiritual way around something, and he just captured that. So that's what attracts me to it. So of course, we have to support that. We bought coffee mugs, and we have one of his prints. I'm going to get a really nice frame and put it on the wall. But anyway, Kim's reminding everybody to drink a full glass of water. The reason being that you want to stay hydrated when you're doing energy work, because energy doesn't flow so well in a dehydrated body, and you want the energy to flow in a balanced way. That's how the healing is accomplished. All right, everybody. Thank you. I honor the God in you. And remember, until the next time, the only way to bring about the greater good is to be the greater good.